After years of hardships, injustice, and inequality, King Louis XVI once again shirked his responsibilities as monarch. He began to overtax the common people while France was in a bankruptcy that he caused. Finally, at the breaking point, the peasants had had enough and reached their limits of tolerance.
On the fateful day of July 14, 1789, the peasants stormed the famous prison, the Bastille. They fought for the end of injustice, famine, and overbearing government, and for their rights.
Many Americans think of the American Revolution as the biggest or most important revolution in history.
Unfortunately, they are all very wrong. Sure, the American Revolution was important, but how would you like to go to France under rule of the king?
The French Revolution was the biggest, or maybe perhaps the most important. It wasn't just contained in one country, it expanded over years into many countries.
But first, the backstory. France had a monarchy government with 3 estates, or social classes. The first 2 estates were wealthy, the third was very poor, and the majority of France. Before King Louis XVI, however, France was still weary. King Louis XIV died in 1715, and his 5-year-old great-grandson Louis XV had to take control. A duke ruled France until King Louis XV reached maturity.
King Louis XV's decision still weakened France. Wars broke out, he taxed people, and he made living in France painful. Life was just people going through famine, disease, and people being killed from wars.
Not as painful as King Louis XVI. Once King Louis XV died, Louis XVI took his place. This new king created more hardships than ever.
After this, in the late 1700s, the colonies were in a revolution. King Louis XVI wanted to help them, completely neglecting his own country.
Historians say he spent about 2 billion livres on the American Revolution, which is almost 3 billion American dollars.
Because of this, France entered a bankruptcy. This is where the 3 estates come in.
The 3 estates weren't houses or properties, but instead were social classes. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobles, and the last estate, which had the most people, were the peasants. From this bankruptcy, King Louis XVI had to tax the common people, not the rich, powerful, and conceited nobles, but the poor, starving peasants. This meant that riots broke out. So, King Louis XVI called for an Estates General, which was surprising because France's government never had to call in an Estates General for nearly 200 years. The Estates General, which had lots of power, had a somewhat diabolical plan. He decided each estate got 1 vote. Therefore, everything to be voted upon would benefit the first 2 estates. So, the peasants would vote no, while the first 2 estates voted yes, and since majority rules, the first 2 estates would always overcome them.
This made the peasants very angry. The general's plan did not help the riots, or the peasants. The peasants wanted justice. The king was not delivering.
They created an oath about a month before the storming. They wanted the king's head on a spear. The peasants also wanted to end the monarchy.
They started a small rebellion that would riot on the streets, curse on the king, and in some cases stole.
They wanted to parade to Versailles, where the king was. The rebellion was inspired by England's Enlightenment. However, they had very little gunpowder. But where would they find it? Then a cry went up. To the Bastille!
The Bastille was originally a fortress in the 14th century. Then it became a prison that held political offenders.
Similar to Alcatraz, the Bastille was a high-security prison with its own governor, Marquis de Launay.
It was made out of rich stone, but over the years the stone wore out. It had a protective gate and a drawbridge.
In the prison cells, the walls were 10 feet thick, so no one could ever get out. However, they were given food, water, and a bed, each relatively decent.
Also, the walls were nearly 30 meters high.
Most importantly, however, the Bastille had 8 towers. Tour de Coin, Tour de la Chapelle, Tour du Trésor,
Tour de la Comté,
Tour du Puits,
Tour de la Liberté,
Tour de la Bertaudière,
Tour de la Bassinière.
These towers were heavily guarded by at least 1 cannon and guards manning the guns.
Although the Bastille was a very popular prison at the time, it never held more than 10 prisoners.
When it was stormed, there were only 7 prisoners in the Bastille. On July 7th, 32 Swiss soldiers led by Lieutenant de Flue came to the aid of the governor.
Then came July 14th, 1789. A huge group of French guards and angry Parisians attacked.
The mob planned on taking gunpowder and freeing the prisoners taken by the king. 300 guards left their posts that day out of fear.
Launay had spent all this time preparing for a minor mob attack, but wasn't expecting a siege.
They anticipated around only 100 angry subjects. The mob attacked using as much gunpowder as they had, which was very little. However, they did have enough gunpowder to fire a cannon. This cannon broke the first gate, which led to the courtyard where the drawbridge was.
"Lower the drawbridge," shouted the angry crowds.
Launay refused, but the crowds kept chanting. Eventually, he sent a message to a mob leader named Hewlin, saying that the Bastille had 250 barrels of gunpowder, but the mob would have to stop rebelling. Launay also said if they refused, then he would destroy the fort, the garrison, and everyone in the Bastille.
The mob once again refused. It was simple. They wanted Launay to surrender the fort.
Eventually, Launay gave up altogether. He lowered the drawbridge and more wars broke out in the Bastille. The mob freed the prisoners, destroyed the fort, stole the gunpowder, and captured Launay along with his soldiers.
Luckily, the siege was successful.
The Bastille was practically destroyed. The mob that captured Launay and his guards cut off many heads, and soon executed Launay himself.
A messenger went to King Louis XVI, telling him about what happened at the Bastille.
"Is this a revolt?" King Louis XVI asked. Then the messenger, La Rochefoucauld-Liancourt, said, "No, sire, it is a revolution." Historians have found accounts that about 98 people were killed, and hundreds more were seriously injured. But how did France end up after the Bastille was destroyed?
What happened to the king? After the Bastille was stormed, French citizens and Parisians once again marched the streets to get King Louis XVI.
They were successful. They went after King Louis and captured him. Finally, in 1793, King Louis XVI was executed.
The prison being destroyed already scared the government. But when King Louis XVI was killed, they knew that they needed to fight back.
From the year of 1789 to the year of 1815, the French Revolution took place. Lots of people believe this because it didn't stay in one country, but instead expanded through many. A big reason this happened was thanks to a man named Napoleon Bonaparte.
Soon after the revolution, people began to write books about it.
Some of which include Les Miserables by Victor Hugo and The Taking of the Bastille by Alexandre Dumas. The French were finally standing up to monarchy.
France became a democracy.
And they created a document known as the Declaration of Rights of Citizen and Man. And, similar to America's Independence Day, France has their own holiday for this event. Every July 14th in France, they celebrate a holiday called Bastille Day. They have parties, wave banners, shoot fireworks, and sometimes they reenact the storming of the Bastille.
I'm Austin Marshall.
And I'm Sam Anderson.
Thank you for watching our documentary on the storming of the Bastille.
We hope you enjoyed. And next July 14th, say to your friends and family,
Happy Bastille Day!